Welcome to DevOps Accents, a podcast on everything around DevOps, public cloud, and cloud-native topics, with your hosts, Pablo, Leo, and Kirill.
Hello and welcome. Hi, Kirill. Hi, Pablo. To our listeners, thanks for coming to another episode of DevOps Accents, where we MKDev, when we provide DevOps data and AI consulting and engineering services. And here on DevOps Accents, we discuss all things related to our industry and anything that might get our attention. Since you are already here, I assume you are subscribed. Thank you for that. If not, you can fix this with just one click. Today with us in this virtual studio, Thomas Falkenberg joins us. Hi, Thomas.
Hello, nice to meet you. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming. The reason why we invite Thomas is cloud architect with a lot of experience at PAYBACK. And you know PAYBACK is a multi-partner loyalty program that lets customers earn and redeem points at various retail service partners, both in store and online. You know it, especially if you live in Central Europe. And Thomas has 20 years of experience in working with distributed systems. He recently moved into a platform engineering role and learned a lot about mindset change, upskilling, trends, and hypes while driving PAYBACK's journey to the cloud. And this is what we are going to discuss today. And he developed his passion for DevOps while working in between development and operation department as a performance engineer. And before we dive deeper into understanding your journey, how you came to where you currently are, I have a very special questions to you, Thomas. What is your accent?
My accent. So my actual language accent is Swabian, as I'm from the area of Stuttgart. If you want to talk about the DevOps accent, that is, I think, a very strong advocate for DevOps. So I learned a lot about DevOps before it was a word. So I was really happy that someone made a word out of it and a conference. So I think the first time I heard about it was really the DevOps days in 2011. I went to a Göteborg conference, and I was really amazed that, okay, I'm not the only one with these kind of issues in my daily work with the collaboration and the cultural aspects of development and operations. And so I got to learn about that. And since then, I was hooked and tried to really establish a lot of practices in our company.
Okay, great. Thank you. This is another accent in our collection of DevOps accents. And Thomas, I don't want to make it sound like you are a dinosaur or something like that, but you have very extensive experience. Can you please give us overview? Because when we talk with experts, when we interviewing them or we work them with them or here on the podcast, and we discuss how they end up in this role, they usually mention the things that we can all relate today and we understand easily. But when we just talk about your experience working on infrastructure and being an architect, it's already only that experience is very extensive. But there was a journey that led you to this role. How it was, how you started, and was it switching to this position and staying there for 2 decades? Was it was it your choice, or was it just I don't know, an accident?
Yeah, great question. I never really thought about it. It was a conscious choice, but it more developed in that direction. Anyway, I can talk a bit about how I started. So I came to PAYBACK in 2007. This is quite a while ago. I moved to Munich, new city, new job, and I was really amazed at already how professional the company was in terms of the area I was working in, which was performance engineering. And I don't know if that's really very common to people, that what this profession is about, because it's very special or specific to certain problems. Not everyone used to afford to have dedicated people working on that. But we had a lot of growth in the payback program back then. And constantly there was some firefighting, because it was just so many users, transactional system, and hard to debug things happening in production. And so what Payback did was pretty early to have like a complete replica basically of their production system, and run tests constantly, like high performance tests with analysis. And that's basically what I did and how I started. I was completely overwhelmed in the beginning, and it took a while to get to know the huge system. But then what I learned is you have to be a bit of an expert in a lot of areas if you work on performance optimizing, because it starts like on the front end, from could be JavaScript on the browser down to the storage level, where eventually the database tries to write into blocks and locks it up or something like that. And learning where the issues are, having like this scientific approach of doing tests again and again, and see what changes if you change some configuration, and then eventually coming down to the root cause of the problem, or the thing that keeps the overall system from performing better, was for me always like an adventure and like detective work. And I was enjoying that, like solving hard puzzles. And at the same time, to do that, back then, the companies typically had a strict separation of development departments and operations departments. So it was the classical way that developers develop features, they throw it over to operations. Operations is incentivized for keeping the production stable, so they don't necessarily like change. But then they deploy that, and if something happens, there's always the blame game starting immediately. So that was what I pretty quickly realized, that this is not great in terms of collaboration, knowledge sharing, and getting a more efficient overall system. So I was always in the middle between development and operations in my role. So I talked with both departments all the time, and a lot, together with other folks that are in a similar position. If you talk about QA back then, which was still like also a single department. So that's why I thought, okay, we need to do something about this and invest, for example, in common tools. So for observability, as you call it today, back then it was more like monitoring. Before that, we had these static dashboards that were generated every few seconds, some graphs where you could see a bit of what's going on. But then stuff came up like Graphite or Logstash and ElkStack. So you could centralize more data and look at it together. And I started also bringing these tools in and working with them for the performance test. And then I had the crazy idea, hey, why don't we put all of this in production and just monitor production the same way? And people said, wow, we don't need that. We have our nice little graphs here, and I like to look at log files and things like that. So it took a lot of convincing that, come on, this is really better. Let's work on that. And then it became pretty normal over the time. And also we managed eventually to converge the departments, have cross-functional teams, and Agile was already a thing for a long time, but it still stopped at production. So that the process that we had never considered really production from day one. And that's much, much different now. This is where I ended up then. Yes, this was, it's not like my job was done, but at least that part of the DevOps journey was well implemented. And then I changed a bit teams on the former operations side. So at least the people that used to run operations. So I learned more about systems architecture and data center setups and modernization. So we eventually came to the point that Payback was growing a lot. We had we were acquired by American Express about 15 years ago or something, and they had big plans to expand the program into different countries. And so we built another platform based on the learnings that we had in different areas, like the loyalty partner group also built, for example, the Bahn card in Germany, the Miles & More system, things like this. So loyalty systems in general. We took that base and that knowledge and built another platform for Payback for the international rollout. which was not really possible with the existing system because it was a big grown monolithic application, not really for different tenants.
We will get there, discussing like how the all the scaling process went, but I want to compare your experience to what you, Kirill, and you, Pablo, experienced when working on different companies with different companies on. And many of our experts and people we know who work as consultants more and basically jump from one project to another, from one platform to another. You, Thomas, on the other hand, probably like, do you have this connection to the platform, to the infrastructure that you build, basically ground up now? And do you guys, Kirill, Pablo, do you feel yourself connected to infras projects that you care and you want to improve it, besides your agreement with the customer or with the client back when you were consultants, freelance consultants?
So I think, at least in my experience, because I don't know, Thomas, how old are you? But more or less we should be the same age. But I've been working more than 20 years too. But my experience is that I've been working in many companies. The longest one, it was 2 years, something like that, 2 or 3 years. So, and what you build is a life history, because 17 years in a company is, you see every step of the company. You see how it's growing. You see, for example, this when you're telling when it's bought by another company, all the changes that are in the industry, and you're in the same place and you're changing everything. In my experience, something different, because I go to one place, I do something, and then I go to another place. So what I mean is that what Thomas has is something like a straight line. So of a history from end to end, and for me, it's like if you are reading a book and you're only in one subject, and you are in one episode of the book, and that's all. It's completely different, because I can imagine that if you talk with Thomas about the names of the machines that they have, I don't know, maybe 10 years ago, he can remember the names of the machines, because when we were giving names to machines. So it's completely different, the experience that I have and the one that he has.
But which of the approaches do you think works better for the health of the infrastructure and for the... Okay, first for the health of the infrastructure. For example, you, Pablo, when you come to a new company, you have basically a fresh view at what they did before you. And you maybe you are immediately can say what needs to be changed, what works, what doesn't work.
But this is not true, because, for example, I don't have the experience that Thomas has when I go to this company. So I can say, okay, yes, I think that this is wrong, but he know all the company knowledge. Because when you go to a new place, you don't have this company knowledge. And you always need to talk with the people that is in the company to understand. Because you can say, no, we need to do that, and that. If you say that, is wrong, because you need to understand first, how is the company, what are the process of the company, how is the company working, and after that you can take a decision. But to do that, you need people like Thomas, because without people like Thomas that has been in the company for a long time, first, there is no company, because a company is made by Thomas, not by Pablo's. Because a person jumping from one place to another is not making companies. It's helping during a period of time, and then this is is completely different.
Yeah, maybe one difference is that when you talk about the health of the infrastructure, to me, I don't care that much about infrastructure on its own. It's like something to get a job done. But what's important in the company is the principles, the culture and the mindset of the people. And what you can do, what you cannot do, because of the context that the company is in. So PAYBACK, for example, has a very strong focus on data protection, because we own a lot of data. We get a lot of data when the people use loyalty systems, and people are always worried what happens with their data, especially in Germany since a long time. And there are good reasons for them to have a focus on data protection, and with the German history, there are reasons that. And if you don't know that, when you come in, for example, like a consultant, and just say, hey, can we not build this like with this simple service in the cloud that just processes your data? And then people get very nervous quickly here, and you have to be very careful how you try to sell something like that. So you have to start with, for example, talking about how the data is being protected, and then talk about maybe some other benefits and things like that. So this is what you learn, I think, over time. What's the DNA of the company? How many risks is it willing to take, and also just the right people to talk to and how to talk to them. I think this is what really gets you further than the plain technology behind the things. That comes secondary in my point of view.
This is a very interesting answer, because this is rare. I know a lot of people who can be very attached to the things they create, and they confuse business needs with their job tasks, right? And they can be very protective about the ideas they try to implement, they try to make with their infrastructure, with the tools they create, often forgetting about what business priority is. Priorities are. And this is, I think, what you mentioned is very important, that being attached more like, not maybe attached, but setting a business priority over tooling is very important. But at the same time, at one point, you chose Google Cloud Platform as your main platform to scale for tens of millions of users. So what was the journey behind this decision, and were you the part of this decision-making process, and what you were thinking about?
Yeah, so the decision that came from multiple dimensions, I would say, that influenced this decision. So I think the most straightforward one is just the pure amount of data that we have to manage, and we did that, and we still partially do this with our on-premise data center, where we have a co-location, and in general this was also working fine. But you always reach the point where your box is just full. You have a database, and if you need to extend it, you have to buy another full appliance, as we were using appliances which are not cheap, which come with big upfront investments if you need to scale those out. And it never goes down, basically. So it's not like elastic. You cannot scale up and down again. If you want to provide the same performance in the non-production environment and to do tests, for example, this also gets pretty expensive. So a couple of things around the classical elasticity that you get in the cloud, but also then other factors like services that are available that we were hoping that we could take away of the toil of our operations engineers to just operate things. This is part of it, but also I think not obvious when we started, because we had very little knowledge when we started with the cloud, is that everything is API driven, easier to reproduce, and we just know if we use infrastructure as code, we have reproducible environments, we have a better compliance standpoint, we know exactly what we are deploying where all the time. So this transparency is a big plus. But also the decision for Google specifically, I think it was a lot of around like BigQuery capabilities. So we had with Amex, they had some experience. We had exchange with those. We could benefit from the relationship of our big mother company with Google. This was also like a financial aspect of the decision. And we were assuming that the commodity stuff like running containers and functions and things like that would not be that much different between the cloud providers. But I think I learned now that there are a lot of differences actually in the details, but these were the main, and then the third one, maybe in the ML and the AI space, we thought at the time, and I still think that's the case, that Google is pretty advanced in what they provide. And also they convinced us that they also, for example, have a very strong networking foundation, as they run a lot of the internet traffic over their network. And as a customer, you can benefit from that as well. So to have like low latency networking capabilities was also important for us. And I was part of that decision. So to the second part, but I would say only partially. I think what came after this decision was was more like, okay, how do we tackle this? I think this was where it got challenging in terms of we need to choose a partner. We cannot do this on our own and things like that. But that's then the next story, like how we actually started implementing all of that.
I think like the whole idea of platform engineering was born basically in your hands, because what you're describing is how you are choosing tools, how you exploring and understanding how things works. And do you think it was an organic way for you to reshape the way you start you do your job and your approach to infrastructure and to platform engineering, that you basically were shaping it from ground up, from zero?
I think it was like an evolution and also a bit of learning by doing, at least in my case. When we started platform engineering, maybe the term was around, but not that much more.
Yeah, it's still a relatively new concept.
Exactly. But at least I think we had something like a platform in the on-premise world without really calling it like that. Kirill knows what I'm talking about, as he helped building parts of that. And it was, but the focus shifted. We with moving to the cloud, we all had to learn that, well, the one extreme is you just hand out the access to the cloud to the developers and let them go. And I think everyone agrees now that this is a very bad idea in general, except if you want just to experiment and try something out as a startup or something, and you have some experience, might work for some time. But eventually you will hit the point where this doesn't scale. And you all end up with a big mess in the end that is hard to maintain. So we wanted to have a platform. I'm not even sure we called it platform team, but the term like IDP and things like that, that was coined later. There was not that much tooling around. I think that was one of our challenges. At least we had the help from a company that has seen a lot of mistakes I think you can do when building or scaling out in the cloud. So to have at least some things on a really strong foundation, like the resource hierarchies, the naming concepts, the permission model, the responsibility model. I think these were the hard problems we tried to solve once. And this is part of the challenge, to identify decisions that you have to make upfront or decisions that you can defer to later when you have a bit more experience. And for this, we had a bit of help, and most of the decisions still hold until today. So this was good. Maybe some things I would do a bit differently, but not fundamentally differently. And fighting for those decisions was hard in the beginning, and also sometimes still is. So some things can always be questioned, and some things might feel a bit hard. But as other decisions might compromise security or compliance, this is then a simple decision, but sometimes hard to argue about.
The cloud tech industry is evolving so fast. Do you keep up with it by improving your skills or upskilling your team? At MKDev, we offer a variety of workshops for just that, from the basics to expert knowledge. Before delivering our workshops and training sessions, we carry out a detailed assessment of each participant. To make sure the workshop is helpful for you and your team, we will add more content to it or throw out what you already know. Or we create a custom workshop specifically for the needs of your team and the specifics of your project.
And Thomas, in your decision to go to Google, because I had to imagine that AWS was there too, and Azure, I had to imagine that, because in these big customers always, they go there. Because I've been working in many migration from AWS to Google, from Azure to Google, from on-prem to Google. So, you said that one of the, BigQuery is one of the reason because you choose that. Finance is another one. But now that you are working with Google, do you regret in something? What is, because I've been working with Google many years, and I think it's a very good one, but there are very weak points. So it's something that you say, "Well, man, please, why do you do that?"
Yeah, Well, I'm in the happy position that I don't have really experience in AWS or Azure. So
Okay.
I know a lot. Like I just heard from consultants or others. Yeah, okay, this is different in AWS. This is better, or this is actually better in Google. So that question doesn't really come up a lot. But I think in the future, this single cloud strategy will probably not completely hold, just because. I mean, for example, we use also Microsoft Teams for workplace stuff, and already see that this mixes up and gets more involved into Azure stuff. And we all also acquired a company that had a product or payment product, pay product, is actually running on Azure. So we have some workloads there, and we also acquired a company that had a workload on AWS. So we have some stuff running there, but it's not part of the platform as it's managed separately still. But yeah, I don't know. What can you say? We didn't want to start with a multi-cloud or poly-cloud approach because that would have completely overwhelmed us. And I think it's cool if you just get to know one cloud really well and then maybe look into others. But it was already a huge step for us.
And the on-prem is completely done, no? You are not using on-prem anymore. Or is it still there?
No, we're still on premise.
So you have the interconnect between Google and...
Exactly, and this is also part of the hard things to do, like this hybrid networking, the interconnectivity. We have a lot, and we know that it's going to take time. Even when we started, we couldn't even say how many years it will take. So we were sure it's not going to be 3 years or something. It's really a big 25 years grown landscape of applications and data and processes that need to be untangled, modernized with different strategies, and then brought to the cloud. And we never, from the beginning, we said we don't do a lift and shift, and we don't do we don't do a lift and shift basically, but we need to explore every part of our applications, like how we migrate it or re-architect or replace or whatever the strategy is. And then we already came up with a rough estimate that, I don't know, 5 years plus something. So it's just a lot.
Yeah, because this lift and shift, as you said, is very good, for example, AWS to Google Cloud, in case that is good. But the on-prem, so move to Google Cloud, everything changed. It's a different world, different way. This elasticity that you were talking about, all the tools that you can use now in Google Cloud that you don't have in on-prem, it's and everything.
Yeah, and also the technology stack that we have is cannot be really used in the cloud at all. So you need to transition anyway from database systems, for example. That's usually the hard part. And and also we are aware that we're not gonna save money by doing that. So this was also not the motivation. And lift and shift would have been hugely expensive, so it didn't make sense at all. As the on-premise data center is actually, like, if you just look at pure compute costs and things like that, it's cheaper than the cloud. I think that everyone knows that by now. But we were more about the expanding our options, and I'm pretty happy that we now expanding on that. If you just look at the AI capabilities in the cloud, if you want to replicate that in your own data center, that's almost impossible.
We often say when we talk to our customers and when we describe our services, there are often some unpredicted things that might happen when you scaling your infrastructure, when you're scaling up business. And did you experience things like that? Because PAYBACK now have tens of millions of users, and to put this into perspective, PAYBACK is used 2.2 million times daily. This is roughly 50 times per second, right? And at some point, I assume this is something that caught you off guard, or was it like planned? Did you experience any unpredicted usage of your infrastructure that went wrong and things like that? Some I'm telling you about the biggest surprise and lesson you learned during this massive transition.
So yes, Payback is really under heavy load constantly, and the problem is it's not just marketing activities, as we are a big marketing machine and one of the biggest in Europe, but we're also like a transactional system that transfers points back and forth, which equals money, which equals we have to know where every point comes from and where it goes, and so we cannot lose a single point. Which means that if you go shopping and you present your Payback app and you collect your points and you have a coupon activator that's checked in real time in the backend, and the response should be there in maybe 50 milliseconds with the amount of points that you collect, and it's booked on your account and you can immediately use those. And so it's a bit like a banking system, but in very, very real time. And this comes with a lot of challenges if you just think about cap theorem and stuff like that. And then extending that to the cloud, you have different SLAs, different levels of responsiveness. Our existing system is very well tuned, but in the cloud, there's only so much insights you get on the exact details on how things work. And people were worried about that in the beginning and had to be convinced a bit, and we had to do a lot of testing. And still, we see that, we have to change the architecture in to accommodate for that not everything is maybe transactional, or it could be some latency spikes that we cannot just get rid of because that's the cloud provider's business. So we build around that. But maybe to your point, like surprises, we had some financial surprises that probably everyone has when using BigQuery and migrating some of the data, and then analysts starting to explore BigQuery and running some bigger queries on it, spiking up a few thousand euros a day just for some queries on the data, which is not hard with that amount of data. And I think they were maybe impressed by the performance. But if you have to on-demand pricing in BigQuery, it just uses all the slots it can do, and so it's very fast, but also expensive if you pay by the amount of data that is being scanned in the query. The good thing is we already had measures in place like budget alerts and budget limits for all the projects. So we defined those with defaults as a cloud platform team when we hand out the projects to the users. So we saw this pretty quickly and then took measures. So this was one of the surprises. Other than that, not really, because I think, we started with a pretty sound foundation of having transparency of what's going on, and also being a bit careful in rolling out the more expensive things. Let's put it like that. Most of the time, this worked quite well.
I often read that companies often face hidden cost when scaling, and you made it sound like you were prepared for that, and you. This is a very clever approach, because I wanted to ask you about practical tips for making sure performance stay high without breaking the bank. And you basically answered this question already.
Yeah, but that, to be fair, this problem is not solved. So we still run the heart of the transactional system in the on-premise world, and are adding the less critical things in the cloud. So new functionalities, new features that can really benefit from the cloud scale, and especially in the marketing area, we used it a lot. And now we are getting to the the engine and the heart of the system, and building that out. But already this year we did a huge transformation in the application, where we changed the membership model and the enrollment process and everything. And that in a running system, that's always the thing. We have, like our CTO just said it in a speech this week, we basically were driving the Porsche on the left lane with 250 miles an hour, and have exchanged the transmission, the engine, and the wheels while driving without having an incident or an impact for the users, because we had really this foundational change already this year. But that's also why it takes so long. If you need to prepare for no impact or very little impact on users and partners of Payback, and then make big transitions, this takes a long time. So this was, for example, this case maybe took 2 years. or 2.5 years to implement and to test, and gradual rollouts, feature switches, and all of that. Takes time.
Let's talk a little bit about decision-making process, because what you're describing and what your CTO said, this doesn't sound like an easy task. I think like there should be taken into consideration a lot of things before implementing anything. And I think one of them would be using, GCP standard tools or versus your custom solution. So how do you choosing between using out of the box tools and building custom solution? How do you decide that? Who's responsible for that? And I think this is very important to know for many of those who listens to us, because it's especially when it comes to this huge platform.
Yes, that's a great question. We had to find our way around that, how we make decisions. We pretty early in this whole transformation process. We also, for one, we changed our organization, but that's a separate topic, maybe on its own, to be more like verticals and have mixed teams and not be organized by technologies, but by business domains that can make their independent decisions in some areas. But to get more concrete on the architectural decisions, we implemented a guild concept. There's, for example, an architecture guild, which one of the first things it came up with were architecture principles, which are like 10 or 12 high-level principles that can then, from those, we can derive practices or patterns. And I don't know, one thing is maybe the focus on essential complexity and not create too much accidental complexity when building things. Sounds a bit abstract, but there are some examples then in the principle. Or also, use cloud native technology and also a bit more detailed, try to use what is provided as a service, unless it doesn't make sense for whatever reason, cost perspective or something. But let's not reinvent the wheel all the time. I think that is something that if you keep building your systems in your on-premise world, you have a long history of your own homegrown tools, which people maybe protect like their little pets, and might be okay for some time, but that doesn't scale well. So as soon as these people leave the company or you take in new colleagues, they have to dig into these custom technologies and learn that and maintain that. So try to use standard technologies, open source technology, and services that are provided, in this case, by the cloud provider. So this was like our go-to solution, was take what Google offers. Most of the time, this worked quite well. Sometimes this didn't work so well. So one example is the CI/CD system in GCP. So we started with Cloud Build because I ran a lot of Jenkins in my life, and I did not want to set up another fleet of Jenkins in Google Cloud. So I said, it's time for something new. Okay, let's start with Cloud Build. That's what Google natively provides. And it's great for what it can do. It's very reliable. It's very cheap. But it doesn't have a huge feature set if you have more complex pipelines or more requirements. So we hit the limits pretty quickly, and also the integration with our existing Git system, which is Bitbucket, and we ran this on premise, was just developing in the beginning, and we were happy that it existed, but it was a preview version, and we now learned what a preview version means. That is really changing a lot and not necessarily very stable. So we were in exchange with Google about that and the respective product managers and gave feedback. But we always felt like this is not the best solution we could get, and we should focus on something else here. But this took a long time, and maybe we should have made the call quicker in hindsight. We were hoping a bit for changes there, but that never happened. So right now we're looking at different things like GitHub and actions and workflows, for example, for this case.
Did you have to fight against some solutions, some new tooling that were appearing throughout the year that might seem beneficial to you at some point, but I assume like trying all of them would create a lot of destruction for the team. And in general, we see many trends in tech that are either hailed as revolutionary or dismissed as hype. And being in the industry for so many years, you have seen trends come and go. And from your perspective, like which trends, especially in tooling, especially in cloud and DevOps today, do you think are here to stay, and which you adopted early on, and you know they help to improve your operation, or another part of the question, which of the current trends that can be dismissed easily because you already, based on your experience, you can see that they are not going to stay?
Okay, good question. I think where we jumped on pretty quickly was all the trends or the hypes in the DevOps in general, but specifically the observability space, to put our money on open standards like Open Telemetry, for example, which time after time the big vendors also adopted and made it compatible with their tool. So open standards, I think it's always good to count on them compared to proprietary solutions that lock you in eventually and just cost a lot of money over time. So this was one thing from the near past. We are generally, I think, not the first ones to jump on new technology, typically, or at least we were not back then, because, well, on-premise, naturally, it takes a bit longer. If you want to do something really new, you need to provision hardware and things like that. But this was also good because we just, I think we skipped some of the hypes, or we just did not, we're not fast enough to invest in it. And then we realized, okay, people are moving away from it. I think maybe some people remember early code generation attempts or like model-driven architecture and then generating code out of UML diagrams or things like that. We tried that a bit, but never went that far. Another one was OSGI on the server side that we looked a bit into, but never took it too far. And this was pretty good. I think we learned our ways. And also my mindset changed completely. So, when I started, I saw a new tool and I wanted to have it. Right now I see a new tool and I try to avoid it. It's just because I know if every new tool adds some mental load on the teams, on the companies, and I think the best tool is the one you don't need. So if you can just get away with what you have, so really be very careful about the added benefit you get by just adding another tool. So I like to have less and less complexity and keeping things as simple as possible.
Simplicity is virtue, right?
Yes, and it's very hard. So it's that's I think you need a lot of experience to find out what's actually simple and what that means and whatnot. And then of course the hype currently with AI technology. I think here we are a bit faster than compared to the last trends, more involved, which also is easily possible if you are in a cloud provider space, working together with Google on some topics here, and also just in the development and DevOps space, things like Copilot or Code Assistant, I think they will just stay and improve over time, will become normal for people to use. Also in the daily work, I think, a lot of people are using it. The major challenges for us were always the legal and compliance discussions and using that. Technology-wise, it is relatively simple also now to build your own applications with the help of AI, APIs, or language models and incorporate these into the applications. That comes with a new set of challenges, but that's probably a completely separate talk and a huge topic. But at least here we found a way to easily experiment with these things without too much investment and just to get to know it and not to be surprised then too much. If new things come up, then we already know a bit the basics and how it compares to other solutions maybe and things like that. So yes, this is a thing that will stay and that we are really looking closely at right now.
this can be a very good advice for a lot of companies to learn and to understand how to balance this experimentation phase versus trying to implement this into your business processes and operational processes as fast as possible. How do you know, how you can understand that experimentation phase is done and now you can switch to, because every tool is evolving at some point. When you've been experimenting with something, it was mature enough to say, all right, we stay with that, we stick with that. But are there some tools that mature enough today that you can say that, yeah, let's stay with them? And how do you, what would be the one simple, is there a one simple answer how to recognize that the tool is mature enough for companies to start adopting it?
That's a good question. There's definitely not a simple answer to find that out, because I think that depends a lot on the context that you're working in and the company. Things like risk appetite or exposure and different factors play a role. But for us, at least, we have an actual process of going from like a POC or proof of value level to a production level. And so there are stages there in the process that need to be taken, which works quite well, I would say. So that's standardized. It's pretty lightweight. And that is basically, if you can imagine things like architectural reviews, you have to at least have an outline of your idea. But that we see these processes as enabling and not as blocking. So I'm not sure if I've ever seen that something got really blocked. It's mostly adaptions, and also as we have grown, the problem is sometimes that people come up with a solution that another department might have already solved with some tool, something else, and this is easily missed in a bigger company. So that's also the purpose, to find that, hey, we already have that, or we have a solution. If you looked at that or talked to this one, they solved this as well. So this is helpful. And we maintain a database of just every tool or every service that we use, and that has a life cycle. So that also covers a lot of the legal reviews if you want to use a tool and things like that. So I can recommend to have something in place that helps you with the process here, so people know I'm free to experiment. I have a high degree of freedom to do things. I just have to put it in a database once and get an initial approval that it's okay to test this. And then I know how the process looks like to push it further. I think that is really important and drives innovation. And so people are perceiving like, hey, this is actually like a startup atmosphere and I can do cool new stuff here. Then just, this is our standard tool for this purpose, use it. We also maintain an internal tag radar, so similar to the ThoughtWorks tag radar, of recommended tools for certain purposes. So just to make it visible, to have it visualized a bit, when, especially for new people, this is really useful. They can go there, hey, how should I don't know, build my Python application? Do you use pip or poetry or whatever? Then there's one recommendation. If you use that, you get a lot of standards, defaults, and people that can help you. This was very helpful and also fun to build and maintain. And another thing is a collection of decision records where we maintain why, not just what we decided, but why we decided. Because this is usually the things that are forgotten quickly. Like, why did we do this 3 months ago? Or even yesterday. So we always try to write down important decisions. Then you need some experience to know what is important, what is not. But we do this on the team level. We have decision records. We have this on the guild level. So the more overarching topics. And this is a great archive that I use regularly just to see what we decided. And also for new joiners, hey, look at our decision. Then you also know a bit more about how we work and how we make decisions.
This sounds really cool. Right? And I can see how it evolved and how it was born through the years and through the years of trial and mistakes. And then you came to this solution that sounds really helpful and really useful. And I think I don't know if smaller companies or emerging companies can build this from on early stages, but definitely investing some of your time into building this basically library would benefit in the long term. And I think like you have maybe today and before you have a privilege to experiment and to try new things and to see if they work and they can fit into many companies, especially smaller companies, they don't have this. And I think that's a big benefit to work in a larger company with a larger infrastructure. I think many of those who listens to us can think about it. Like when you're choosing a company or infrastructure you're going to work, this is one of the points like that you can put into a list of benefits to work. You can do this, a lot of cool stuff there. I can feel you're like a bottomless pit of knowledge. For those who wants to learn more and want to listen to you, do you have some places on the web where they can find you, to listen to you, to see you on stage maybe?
Yeah, LinkedIn is, I think, where you find me. Just search for Thomas Falkenberg, PAYBACK, and just chat me up. I would be really happy to discuss some topics more if you're interested. Or we occasionally go to the GDT meetings here with Google in Munich, the Google developer meetings. If you want to meet in person, we sometimes host meetups at the PAYBACK site here next to the Theresienwiese in Munich. So always welcome to come by and say hi and have a discussion about these topics. We're really happy to share.
Thank you, Thomas. This was very fascinating. I still have so many more questions. I think we should have a follow-up episode sometime next year. And if you guys up for it, make sure to be subscribed. Make sure to like so that we know that you like the episode too and you want to learn more about it. Thank you, guys, all of you, for joining us today. And for the rest of us, we will see you in 2 weeks.
Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
There are no challenges that we couldn't overcome. Whether it is immediate infrastructure problems or planning a future project, we won't simply answer your questions. We become a part of your team to help you complete the mission. Our solutions consider the interests of your business and the combined expertise of the industry, as our staff is made up of more than a dozen experts in different areas who share decades of field-tested experience and knowledge with you.